gets in front of these drivers and plenty of opportunities.
But yes, a bit of point of contention, but it doesn't matter now, Ron. We're going green.
Drivers are on their way, and it's a rather convincing start from Joyner. He's going to be leading them complicated. Heading through this bend, it tightens up though before they head on into turn number 8. This is going to be very close.
What is that?
Based off the fact you sound like you sat on a cold toilet seat there, Adam, but that was insane. And Kramer was mega sideways coming out of turn number 8.
That one got me. That one got me.
Look at this conga line. Dun 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 dun. Who was it that came up for the? Oh, that was Tolo coming in. Well, hello and good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to Slow Motion Broadcasting, and welcome back to the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors. This is round number 10 of the season, coming to you today from Knockhill. My name is Ron Maunz. Alongside me in the commentary booth is Randall McGrew, and in the virtual production hall, we have Guido Marzucchi. We head to Scotland to kick off the final trio of races from this season, and to compound the challenges of the short and technical track, we have rain coming down by the bucketful. Randall, if these drivers want to have an easy day in the sim, I think the only way to describe their feelings heading into this race is that they're feeling SOL.
Yeah, if they want an easy day-to-day, they're just going to pack it up and go home now. Dealing with a tight course like Knockhill is a challenge enough. Make it wet? Boy, this is going to be an interesting race for sure.
Oh, it is going to be a super interesting race around this racetrack. It's one that doesn't get a whole lot of use in iRacing, but it is a wonderful ride. This Scottish circuit, 1.25 miles long, only 9 turns, which is possibly the lowest amount of corners that we've had thus far this season, but still, we're going to have some fun today. We've had a brilliant ride up to this point. Lots of different winners, lots of different challengers, and some good championship battles to talk about. And speaking of, let's take a quick look maybe at the championship points in the not too far off future, and get a good feeling as to how things are shaking out from this season. It's been a wild ride up to this point. Many different winners in the Spec 1, Spec 2 category. Masters, not so much. Spec 1, you can see Ian Joyner. He's been dominant thus far this season. He's got actually, I'll do the quick math in my head, aka quick math. I'll count the graph. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 wins thus far this season. So Ian Joyner really proving himself to be fast. He's your championship leader coming into the final trio of races. 768 points on the board. Back in the 600s is their P2 driver currently of Jason Green. Michael McConnell running at the top 3 in the Spec 1 point standings. Close between Green and McConnell, but Green and Joyner pretty far far apart. That's nearly 100 points between those drivers. Really shows you the pace that he and Joyner are shown all throughout this season. So that's how it looks like in Spec 1. Gotta take a quick little gander over to Spec 2, where it's Jeff Wubker leading the points currently. He's about 50 in front of Boris Essman, the German, in P2. Bill Walker rounding out your top 3 in the Spec 2 category. A little bit closer in that class, and that has been a really tough class to try and pin down. Let me tell you this. This is a nice little fun fact. Despite the fact he finds himself in the championship lead, Jeff Wubker has not won a race thus far this season in the Spec 2 category. Really shows you can get those wins, but if you're not consistent, you're not going to be in the spot that Wubker finds himself in with only 3 more races left to go. We're going to move on to Masters now, and the janitor himself, Jörg Mani. Holy cow, 812 points on the board. That's nearly double of your P2 Masters driver of John Toms, Jim Brewster, rounding out your top 3. It's actually pretty close with Jim Brewster and Antonio Reese. Antonio Reese, actually, we need to define whether it's Antonio Reese or Antonio Reese. I've always called him Reese, but Antonio Reese only has 1 win thus far this season, that coming at Donington Park. The rest of them have come to Jörg Mani, including an overall win at Okayama 2 weeks ago. I don't believe that Jörg Mani is going to be joining us here today, based off the fact he was running in the Bathurst 12 hour. So unfortunately for him, his million-point championship lead going to go down to 9,999. So that's how it's looking like at the present moment. But Randall, let's do a quick little track guide.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jörg Mani is not only here, we're watching him right now as he makes his way towards turn 1, and which I always try to mispronounce, Duffus Dip, which is in the rain here is going to be a lot like a water slide. You see a huge puddle there at the bottom, and they have to go wide around. And that's going to bring him into McIntyre, which is a very tight right-hander that they have to get the braking done early because they don't really have a good straight line. And then through the chicane, you see they're really clobbering the curbs, even though they're very wet. But if you run too far wide there on the exit, as we go through a veritable hailstorm of gravel, that they're going to get a little slick. He gets his way through Clark, and then we're on our way up Railway Bend, which is going to lead us to the last corner, which is a tight uphill right-hander in the form of Taylor's. And look at the puddles there. They have to very carefully pick their way through that corner. You normally want to open that up more, but with those puddles there, you have to take a compromised entry in order to get through there quickly without sliding the car. And then the uphill run to the start-finish line, that pit entry there on the left, pretty easy to get in, but coming out of pits, going to be really, really tricky, as you're going to be coming out right into the racing line as Jörg goes for a big slide through turn 1.
Yeah, so Jörg Mani playing me like a fiddle there, and not actually skipping out on this race. Credit where credit's due to him, the fact he decided to run this race, and of course showing his usual pace, slotted P6 in this qualifying session, about halfway through it. Currently, your provisional pole sitter is Richard Harwood, setting a 57.492. Man, under 60-second lap times, even in these soaking wet conditions. Soaking wet with gravel strewn around the racetrack as well. Again, flashbacks to Brands Hatch earlier on in the season when the track was just absolutely caked in gravel. I think I even said, not for the Formula 4s, but for the Formula Vs, in reference to turn number 2 around that track being absolutely coated in gravel that used to be on the outside of turn number 1, that the track was so stoned that we're off the air. So I think we're going to have a case of deja vu here at Knockhill.
Yeah, it looks like the gravel traps are kind of being relocated lap by lap by different drivers, as we see Adam Thompson going for a bit of a ride there. And right now he's sitting on the Spec 2 pole provisionally, so he's found some pace around here. I wonder if he's going to pass inspection once qualifying is finished, because this kind of pace is not normal for Adam.
I'm not touching that one. I will say maybe he stole some rockets from the military, just stuck them into this Formula 4 going down the straightaway, just buzzing by everyone. So who knows, maybe there's some sort of chicanery going on there. I will note one thing about this track. It's one that I haven't really gotten a lot of experience driving around on iRacing, but I remember absolutely loving driving around this track in Project Cars 2. Also, It's an apples broccoli comparison, comparing the experience of driving around this track in Project Cars 2 to iRacing, but I think the love for this track still remains. It's been open all the way since 1974, and it's remained unchanged ever since. So the track designers all the way back there in the mid-70s clearly knew what they were doing. This track just has a unique level of charm to it. You know, all British racetracks do. But I don't know, something about Knockhill, maybe it's just the shortness of it all. Feels like you can buzz by laps very, very quickly. But this track just has a good feeling whenever you're driving around at Randall, at least in my book.
Also, the way that it's set up is you can run it in both directions. So the reverse layout is open for racing as well. And the nature of the track is completely different in reverse. You have to attack it way differently, and it presents a completely different challenge. The same corners ran backwards, you would think it wouldn't be that different. It's wildly different. And races done in reverse compared to this direction have a completely different feel to them. So if you're used to racing it in one direction and suddenly you have to race it in the other direction, you might think you have an advantage. You don't. So we'll see if any of these drivers are more used to this direction, maybe more used to the reverse direction. We'll see how they're able to deal with the challenge today.
And, you know, while we're following Yanqi Lin in the number 30 car, I want to share a nice little story of this track. And I'm not sure exactly how Yanqi is going to feel about me sharing this, but a nice little fact I know about Yanqi as he's mega sideways, heading down into, what was the pronunciation that he gave, Randall, for turns number 1 and 2? That's Duffus Dip.
Duffus Dip. Yeah, I keep wanting to call it Doofus Dip. And maybe we'll have a few people make it Doofus Dip today during the race, but it's definitely named Duffus Dip.
I think it's a bit iffy naming a part of the racetrack Doofus Dip, because really, when it comes to this broadcast here today, the real doofus is usually going to be me. But one thing that I want to mention about Yanqi Lin is a couple of years ago, for one of the runnings of the Max Bands event, which I feel like is just prerequisite information for most iRacers to know about, organized by Reese Gardner and a decent chunk of the crew over at SimSpeed TV. We'll mention them by name since I don't work for them. However, I have worked with Reese on the air. Very, very nice guy, and I used to watch his videos back when I was in middle school, which was an odd experience being on the air with him. But regardless, that event, one time they were running on the trial layout of Knockhill, because that final section, turn number 9, technically speaking, it does have an oval baked into it. It's the goofiest oval of all time. I mean, I'm usually a bit biased when it comes to triangular ovals. I mean, I'm from Pennsylvania. Pocono's my not my hometown track. It's like 2.5 hours away, but it's still a track that I hold near and dear to my heart, at least. But Yanqi, one time for the Max Bands Open, or whatever the hell they call the event nowadays, he won it at this track, running around the tri-oval. I can't remember the format or what kind of cars they're running at. Certainly wasn't in these Formula Fords, but Yanqi does have a win at this track in the past. Completely different event, completely different circumstances, but I guess he has some sort of good feeling every single time he pops in here. Currently qualified 4th as it stands at the present moment. Only about 2.5 tenths of a second of your pole sitter, which is still Richard Harwood. Never mind, though. Yanqi Lin playing me like a fiddle, improving by 1.5 and jumping his way up to 3rd.
Yeah, Richard Harwood leading the way here on the timing board. Ian Joyner, who we normally see dominate qualifying sessions, currently sitting 4th, so he might have his hands full. We'll see if he's able to make his way to the front of this leaderboard, and if not, we'll see if he's able to work his way through some traffic in a very, very tight track that's known to cause a lot of, for lack of a better word, incidents. Especially with those puddles there at the bottom of turn 2.
I think the correct technical term to describe how some of these races usually turn into would be a shiitake mushroom show. That's usually what I say when it comes to races like this. That can be super, super hectic with the rain as well. Going to be a huge factor. I mean, you can see right now the track is soaked. It's caked in gravel. It's soaked with rain. iRacing currently marking the track as moderately wet as it stands at the present moment. We see Adam Thompson synchronized spinning with himself and Daniel Tufts. That, I believe, unless I'm very much mistaken, is coming out of turn number 6. Unless I'm very much mistaken, really hard to pick out exactly where we are on the racetrack with how soaked it really is. But not ideal conditions for these drivers. And in terms of the temperatures as well, it's not great either. The ambient temperature currently at 65 degrees, and track temperature at 63. So these tires, they're going to be cold and they're going to be soaked with rain. And a reminder again to anyone who hasn't tuned into a Formula Ford broadcast, either here at the Weekend Warriors or just generally on iRacing, these cars do not have slick and rain tires. They have one specific tire, which is kind of like a Chimera abomination of the both of them, so it doesn't displace enough water to be perfect in the wet, but it's also too cut up to be very good in the dry. Gives this car a nice little bit of character, but also gives these drivers some slightly heightened blood pressure as a result.
Absolutely. A lot of these drivers are going to feel like they're in Groundhog Day out here. It's going to be cold, it's going to be gray, and it's going to last for the rest of your life as we see Daniel Tufts coming through that puddle. And as soon as he gets to that puddle, the car wants to hydroplane and just the rear end steps out. We see them still attacking the curbs a lot in the chicane, which is a surprise to me by itself. But the curbs there seem to be okay. It's when they get out here right there on that exit curb, the second they get out there, look at that big puddle, everybody seems to go around. So they're really going to have to tighten up that exit. And if you're racing with somebody, it's going to be impossible. So I think the key for most of these drivers is going to be who's going to keep it pointed in the right direction the most during this race. I think everybody's probably going to have a spin event at some point in this race, or at least a huge slide where they lose a lot of time. So you just need to minimize those mistakes, maybe pit out of traffic if you find yourself mired with a bunch of other cars, and just try to keep it pointed in the right direction. Keeping it pointed in the right direction is going to be your key to success here today, and I think the driver that does it the best is going to win the race.
You know, I'm going to invoke a little bit of lore here from the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors as Yanqi Lin jumps up to the provisional pole in the number 30 car, saying a 57.433. So I guess the story that I shared about Yanqi having some good prior experience around this track really serving him well as it stands at the present moment, dodging spun race cars all around this track. But what was the point that I was going to raise? Oh, yeah, sharing a nice little story from one of the first ever Formula Ford Weekend Warriors broadcasts I did. It was a race at Sebring back in the early stages of Season 2 for 2024. It was probably my fifth Weekend Warriors broadcast, and running with the Formula Fords, absolutely soaked with rain. This was right after the rain was added too, and everyone started referring to Sebring as Lake Sebring. As a result, it was that soaked. So remembering that experience of a lot of drivers going off the track, lots of the drivers that you're going to be seeing here on the racetrack today were part of that race. I'm sure they're going to be getting the same flashbacks that I will be having all throughout this broadcast here today. The checkered flag out, though, in this qualifying session, and let's see if Richard Harwood has anything to say about Yanqi Lin. Ian Joyner, though, jumping up to second. He got close, 2,000th of a second between your current provisional front row sitters, but Ian Joyner with not enough time to be able to get the move done. Richard Harwood scraping 88 miles an hour, getting himself sent back to the Neolithic period, finds himself in third at the present moment. Will it be an improvement from the driver, the number 28? It will not. Still finds himself in third, but Ian Joyner in the number 8 car, he gave it the old college try. It just was not enough. 2,000ths of a second around a 1 1/4 mile racetrack. He could have probably gained that by going a foot closer into some of the curbs around this track.
Absolutely. It's enough to put him on the front row, which is really what's important to him. I would think it gets him away from a lot of the traffic. He will still have to deal with Yanqi Lin, but if you only have one car in front of you, that's not so bad. If you have 3 or 4 or more and you're mired with people coming behind you fast as well, it could get dodgy very quickly in those first few corners. So he'll be happy to be on the front row.
Yeah, I think he's going to be very happy regardless, and let's see if the happiness that some of these drivers are feeling after the qualifying session is going to convert into this 40-minute long race that we have coming up. We have to worry about the weather conditions, obviously the rain looking to continue on into the race session. In fact, there you can see track drying up a teeny tiny bit, but still rather soaked. Also have to think about those pit stops as well. But let's get the race underway by taking a look at the starting grid. And it's going to be Yanqi Lin in the number 30 car starting this race from the pole. That's a 57.433 to grab the pole. Ian Joyner finds himself 2,000ths of a second behind. Not close enough for the Brit behind the wheel, the number 8 car, to grab the pole, but he certainly gave it a whirl of a shot. Richard Harwood going to be starting in third next to Daniel Tufts in fourth. We have Juan Garcia, the Canadian, the number 32 car, going to be starting in fifth next to Jason Green in sixth. Soren Garrett will start this race in seventh next to the Masters pole sitter and the dominant Masters man, the janitor, as we like to call him, Jorg Mani, starting this race in eighth. Adam Thompson will start in ninth, the pole in the Spec 2 class, next to Kevin Adrian, rounding out your top 10 fittingly in the number 10 car.
Michael McConnell's going to start in 11th with Antonio Reese in 12th. Tortello is going to start 13th. Next to Ethan Orr in 14th. Fabian Singer going to start up lineup 15th with Boris Esman alongside him. Chris Montgomery, who won last week in the Spec 2 division, is going to start 17th. Next to John Thompson 18th. Rounding out your top 20, Chris Walker and Paul Jackson.
And looking outside of the top 20, we got Bill Walker in the 319 starting this race in 21st. Andrew Love starting in P22. Stevie Ray, series admin himself, in 23rd. Mark Smith in the 222 car will start this race in 24th. Then looking through the final few starters that we've got in this field, we've got Glenn Wolowski, the Canadian, starting in 25th. Jeff Wubker, your Spec 2 championship leader, starting in a mildly disappointing 26th. Next to Daniel Verone, rounding out your 27 car, set to take the green flag in the not too far off future. Waiting at this point in time to get this formation lap underway and bracing ourselves for what's going to be a really intense day of racing action. Moderately wet is how iRacing likes to call it. The track temperature still not improving. 65 still the ambient. Now 64 degrees for the track temperature. Wow, scalding hot. Oh, Yanchi Lin deciding that now is the time to get that formation lap underway. I think I know what Yanchi is doing. That's a dangerous game, though. Doesn't want to overtake the pace car and pick up a black flag. In fact, I had to take a look to see if he did. He did not, so very lucky for the driver of the number 30 car. But Randall, we got a lot to focus on in this race. The rain obviously going to be a big factor, possibly dampening, pun very much so intended, the strategy content that usually affects these races. That strategy is still going to be a big factor.
Absolutely. Normally at the start of these races, it's pure survival mode, and after a couple laps, that mode kind of fades away, and you go into attack mode, or maybe into fuel saving mode. They're going to be doing the entire 40 minutes of survival mode today. The start is going to be crazy. There's going to be something that happens in the first few corners. There's going to be drivers that go around. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of who. It's going to happen. I expect we're probably going to see at least one very surprising result out of somebody today.
Yeah, I would not be shocked at all if we see either just a complete story of dominance for Yanchi Lin, flashing back to that Sebring race. That's exactly what he did. So would not be shocked by that at all. Wouldn't be shocked if we see someone get struck by a falling anvil between now and the checkered flag. Hey, it's me on the broadcast. That's bound to happen at some point. But this is still going to be a really good race here to bring in the final trio of races from the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors here for Season 1 of 2025. That pace car making the turn to come down pit lane. The field now in the hands of our pole sitter of Yanchi Lin. Stevie Ray already down pit lane. May have to touch on that in a couple of moments where the green flag is out, and the drivers are on their way. And look at that, already trying to make some moves on his Daniel Tuss in the number 34 car around the outside of Ian Joyner. Let's see if he can go for the double. There we go. Oh, he's going to get hung out to dry through turn number 1. That's going to cause him to drop down to 4th. Some drivers already going for a spin. That's Jason Green around. Coming out of turn number 2, multiple cars spun. Thompson involved in that drama as well. And someone nearly ending up upside down. Daniel Tuff spinning off the circuit. We were expecting some drama at the very start of this race, but as a grab on the miss flies, we weren't expecting that.
Looks like Soren Garrett's going for a bit of an adventure there. No, not Soren Garrett. Juan Garcia going for a bit of an adventure. Not the only one going for an adventure this opening lap. Daniel Tuss was out there by him. Looks like he spun on his own, just out there dealing with the wet conditions as Yanchi Lin and Ian Joyner engaged in a battle coming up to the final corner for the lead. It forced Joyner to go through that puddle. He had to straighten up the wheels to make that car continue to go around the corner properly without sliding. He was able to get the power back down really well, though, so he's going to have a huge run down the front straightaway. New leader, Ian Joyner, can he retain it going into turn 1? Looks like Yanchi Lin going to fall into the line, and we got a bit of a 3-car breakaway up front here. Juan Garcia and Soren Garrett trying to battle for 4th position. Kevin, Adrian, Fabian Singer, Bill Walker. We're looking down to see where some of these drivers that were involved in that lap 1 mayhem may have shook it out, and it looks like most of them have dropped pretty far down the field.
And many drivers dropping down the running order, the latest being Tortello and Chris Montgomery, those two down in P18 and P19 as it stands currently, with multiple cars still down into the pits. Richard Harwood continuing to deal with connection issues, so hopefully that doesn't affect any of the drivers that he ends up being side by side with. Ian Joyner, your current race leader, Yanchi Lin dropping down to 2nd. Richard Harwood finds himself in 3rd as it stands at the present moment, so very early on in this race, but side by side with Harwood and Lin coming out of the final corner of tail sailors onto that start finish straightaway. Let's see, this is going to be close between these two. Who's going to back out of it by the time they head off into Duffus Dip of turn number 1? Here we go. Ian Joyner saying the 5th lap of the race, and Richard Harwood blowing Yanchi Lin's metaphorical doors off to get the move done. But look at that, he ends up on the curb, and oh boy, both of them ended up into the grass, and Harwood going off the track ends up in the dirt, and he's going to nose it into the barrier. I think that front left tire is broken off. Richard Harwood, I think he's out of it.
Yeah, it's going to be day over for him. He's going to have to reset that car. He does get a fast repair, but he's definitely out of contention for the lead. This has given Ian Joyner a bit of a breakaway here. He's got a 1.2, 1.3 second gap over Yanchi Lin, and we're going to take a look at the mayhem on the start once again and see what happened here. As we're taking a look at John Toms, Chris Montgomery here on the start, and they're coming through. This so far looks pretty clean. And I suspect that one of them gets out here on the exit curb. And
that's McConnell. McConnell flipped it. Holy cow. I mean, I thought we nearly had a flip in the form of John Toms, but no, McConnell ending up on his lid. So that's, oh, wow. I mean, can't say I'm necessarily surprised in these open wheel cars with the wheels sticking out like the legs of a spider, but that, oh, wow, that's... We were expecting some drama at the start of this race, and Randall, we certainly got it in the bucketful.
Absolutely. Not a surprise at all. There's just complete mayhem up and down the field, dealing with the wet conditions, the traffic, everything. Not a surprise to see all this kind of carnage. Jason Green being taken out here. Adam Thompson, we saw many of them coming to the pits. So they do have fast repairs. So they're going to try to salvage as many positions as they can after these incidents, but it was an absolutely wild start.
Yeah, total chaos at the very beginning of this race. Ian Joyner, though, looking to avoid all the chaos. He's your current race leader with 4 minutes on the clock, building up that lead between himself and Yanchi Lin to 2.3 seconds. Lin, I gotta say, I think he's counting his lucky stars the fact that he's no longer dealing with the drama with himself and Richard Harwood. Harwood still in the pits at this very early stage of the race. Already a lot of retirements. Antonio Race, Jason Green, John Toms, and Andrew Love currently out of it. Stevie Ray, he started this race from the pits. He now finds himself in the lead in the Masters category, considering all the bullcrap chaos that went down at the very start of this race. Starting from the pits seeming to be the good strategy for Stevie. He finds himself up 13 spots from where he started in this race. Final car inside the top 10, and your leader in Masters by a pretty significant margin.
Absolutely. Decided to go with the safe route. That turns out to be the fast route as well. Not a huge surprise there. As Ian Joyner has opened up this gap to Yanchi Lin to over 3.5 seconds now. So he's absolutely running away with it right now, and it's setting a breakneck pace, dealing with the wet conditions really well. Watching him coming through, as we're going to take a look back at Daniel Tufts and see what happened to him. This would have been after that lap 1 scrum, so we're seeing him come up to, this looks like the final corner, and he just comes in way too hot and locks up the rears under braking, then slides through the corner apex, gets it going back again in the right direction, loses a handful of time. So not a big loss for him, but a loss nonetheless, as we continue to watch Ian Joyner now having to deal with lap traffic. That's another thing we kind of didn't talk about in the intro to this. The leaders are definitely going to be dealing with lap traffic through most of this race, given the short nature of this track. They're going to very quickly catch back markers and have to deal with them for a long time. So lap traffic could play a huge role in who wins this race.
Yeah, that is a very good point that you raised there, Randall, talking about the lap traffic. Doubly so around a racetrack like this. You know, this track is old school. It was constructed back in the 1970s, and when they constructed it, they didn't have any aspirations of hosting Formula One, so this track is old school. Not a whole lot of overtaking opportunities, doubly so in conditions like this around this narrow and technical and short track as well. So dealing with traffic and catching up to these cars, the main thing that's going to make the difference in terms of the battle for the lead, either in the classes, in the case of your current battle for the overall win between Ian Joyner and Yanchi Lin, the battle that we've had on screen a couple of moments ago involving Soren Garrett and Kevin Adrian, or some of the battles that we may have for class position in the not too far off future. On the subject of that, I think I may have jinxed Stevie Ray. Here's Daniel Tufts running wide. That's coming out of turn number... Whoa! And he goes off the track yet again. Okay, Daniel Tufts. And he goes into the wall. That is going to break his left rear. That's going to take him out of it. That, I believe, the initial off-track excursion was coming out of chicane. Yes, they call it chicane and chicane alone. That's turn number 5 and 6. Then goes off the track yet again into Clark, and that's going to take him out of contention. But Stevie Ray... either he decided to come into the pits very early on. He just exited pit lane right now. But I'm not sure that's a whole story because I think he dropped back a little bit beforehand. So the commentators jinx possibly striking Stevie in the 911 car.
Stevie Ray is the Pied Piper of pit strategy whenever he shows up to race. He's normally the first driver to come down pit lane for service as soon as the pit window opens, so we may have seen him come in for service. But you're right, I think maybe he had a moment out there and then decided, okay, I'm going to pit now and get fuel and try to run it to the end of the race. As we see him now back in 19th position, which puts the janitor back in the lead for the Masters division, at least temporarily. We'll see if it stays that way, but he's all the way back in 16th. Boris Esman is leading the way for Spec 2, and look at this gaggle of cars. There's no way this is going to work out clean. As they go side by side, now approaching the chicane, they're going to sort it out a bit here, but I have a feeling somebody's going to get a little too greedy here on exit, maybe spin around, and so far, so good. But they are still battling as they make their way up to Clark, and there's going to be contact here, almost guaranteed, and there it goes, contact, and that's going to get Harwood involved as well. So Harwood, after having a really great start and a really good qualifying, it finds himself in trouble once again, all the way down to 21st position, and here comes the overall leader onto the scene of this incident. Is it going to be cleared up by the time he gets there? Yes, Ian Joyner, and Yanshi Lin is only 2.8 seconds behind, so Yanshi Lin has been able to cut that lead down a little bit, so Joyner being affected a bit by traffic as he makes his way around this course.
And Ian Joyner, of course, the dominant driver thus far in this season, but Yanshi Lin is no slouch either. He is a fast driver in the entirety of the Weekend Warriors. Won the iRacing special event SCCA runoffs a couple of years ago, if my memory serves me correctly. He's won some races in this series in the past. He is super duper quick, and let's take a look at this. That was just simply never going to work side by side into that section of the racetrack. I can understand trying to get some moves done and making hay while the sun is shining. The sun shining, of course, being a metaphor around this track, still covered in rain and cloud cover. I mean, you can see there was gravel on the track as well. So even that was never going to happen. Work.
Like you said, it was never going to happen, and it's rare that I can predict contact like that and not use my amazing psychic powers. That was very plainly going to end in disaster, and I think everybody saw it coming. I think I was stating the obvious when I said there was going to be contact there, and that's exactly how it played out.
Yeah, as soon as I saw that, I mean, I sound like a tornado siren when they went side by side, and that was for good reason, because you knew as soon as those drivers started to go side by, I mean, there was no physical way in which they would have been able to get through that corner without contact. I've made some stupid bets on the air. One time, I ate a Post-it note at the end of a broadcast because I was so shocked about a driver's fuel strategy. Yes, that did actually happen. I can provide proof after this broadcast is said and done as well, but I've made some stupid bets. I don't know what I would have bet if they managed to go through there without making contact, because just based off the positioning of the two cars, it simply wasn't going to work. And the Spec Racer Fords, maybe, because you could just beat the crap out of your competitors and push them out of the way. In these Formula Ford cars, though, the wheel's sticking out. Any sort of wheel-to-wheel contact, and either you're going to end up striking the moon or your competitor is going to end up striking the moon. There's no scenario in which that's going to work out well. Let's take a look at a moment for Stevie Ray. This heading into the chicane section of 5 and 6. Runs wide on corner exit, hits the curb, and skates into the gravel. That small little flat-out blast between turns number 6 and 7. Every single time we see a car go through there, Randall, you just see the gravel getting kicked up genuinely through that section. It feels like there's more gravel there than there is on the rallycross layout of Knockhill.
Yeah, absolutely. The gravel is being pulled on the track lap after lap. Every time a driver runs wide, Stevie Ray had what was possibly the best case scenario for not staying on the track in these conditions, where he ran out there in the gravel. As we see Chris Walker go around, I don't think there was contact there. We have to get a replay to confirm that, but it looks like maybe he just got out there into the marbles and the gravel on the outside of that corner, and it just went around on him. We're going to take a look one more time. Here he is coming through the chicane, gets out there, avoids that exit curb. He still has a little bit of sliding. There's a car checking up, and I think that might be Soren Garrett's, and it causes him to check up. And then suddenly he has Adam Thompson on the inside, and there's a little bit of contact there from Thompson to send him around. I think maybe he was caught a little bit off guard and didn't expect Adam Thompson to suddenly appear on the inside of that corner. And now he's going to take to the pit lane, possibly get some repairs, come in, fill up that fuel tank, and get underway once again. Ian Joyner still leading. He's opened that gap back up to nearly 4 seconds over Yanchi Lin. So once he dispatched to some of that traffic, he was able to find the pace once again, and he's looking pretty flawless around here.
Yeah, Joyner looking to not put a foot wrong all throughout this race. And there's definitely a comment to be made about the fact that he's British. He's used to driving around in the rain. That's mean. I'm sorry. Well, is it inaccurate? No, not really. Let's take a look at Richard Harwood in the number 28 car. He's been blinking in existence. Clearly, the UFO activity around this racetrack not doing him any favors. Let's see. And around he goes through turn number 7. That's Chris Montgomery arriving at the scene of the accident right after it happened. And let's see if he, I was just going to say, let's see if he blinked out again before the end of that replay, and I think he did. So that was beautifully timed for me to nearly say that. But getting back to the subject of Ian Joyner trying not to put a foot wrong throughout this race, I think we should have kept track of the amount of drivers who have either been struck by a falling anvil or struck themselves onto a falling anvil. Usually in these races, you see a driver here and there that can just get through the entire race clean without any major incidents. Ian Joyner, I feel like even he is walking around this track as if he's walking around on eggshells.
Yeah, he's very much tiptoeing quickly around this track. Right now, he seems to be not really putting any toes wrong. We've seen him go wide through the final corner a couple times and have to drive through one of those puddles, and he's able to manage it pretty well by straightening up the wheel mid-corner as he hits those puddles. I think the time that he's going to have to be most on the watch, though, is when he comes into the pits. He may come out into traffic that's approaching turn 1 and find himself in a compromised position going through those first 2 corners, or maybe even just getting a little bit complacent, coming out with a car that's a slightly bit heavier on fuel, and then suddenly finding himself off into the grass and throwing away a huge gap and or an easy win. So he's going to have to keep his wits about him as he progresses through this race. We're almost 15 minutes into this race, so we're getting to the point where we're going to start seeing a lot of traffic on pit lane, and that pit exit can become exceptionally busy and exceptionally hairy very quickly.
Yeah, that pit exit leading right onto the racing line into turn number 1. That is a fate worse than death. As we see Mark Smith speaking at turn number 1, I think this may have been a moment for him heading into that section. Let's see, running wide into the gravel. And be careful on the rejoin. Oh, boy, Soren Garrett nearly just got whacked.
Yes, he did. That was a very... Mark Smith, I don't know if he even knew where that first corner was. He overdrove it so much. Completely missed the braking mark and was not able to get the car turned in. Took a wild ride. As we see somebody else, is that Chris Walker again maybe having an issue there in the bottom of the hill? Is that who this is? Yeah, it looks like Chris Walker having another issue. We're going to ride with him down the hill, and he's going to shoot really far wide past turn 1 and then go down the slip and slide through turn 2, try to wrangle it up, and then he finds himself there on the outside as Ian Joyner comes through, and he's just going to go through a casual stroll through the gravel, park it, and say, nope, I think I've had enough, boys.
This is a very odd comparison, talking about turn number 1 and 2 around this racetrack. Mainly just turn number 1 and the entrance of this version of Knockhill that we are running. This would be the clockwise version of this track. It's like trying to rip apart the 2 packets of Swiss Miss hot chocolate mix, and you have those small little tabs that connect the 2 of them, and regardless of how you slice it, you will always end up ripping a hole in one of those packets and just have a big pile of chocolate dust in your cupboard. I feel like that makes absolutely no sense, but it's the best way that I can describe the way you have to attack turn number 1, especially in conditions like this. You could go about it the same way 2 laps in a row and have a completely different result. One time you're going to feel like, oh yeah, I can carry about 25 more miles an hour through here. Next time around, you're going to go so far off the track, you may as well end up in Northern Ireland when everything is said and done, skipping over the water all the way there. But turn 1, possibly the most challenging corner on this racetrack, as we see multiple drivers going off through there.
Yeah, Ethan Orr had an incident in front of the Masters Division leader and the overall leader. So this is probably what Ian Joyner is most at threat from, is somebody having an incident right in front of him where he doesn't have any time to react, as now he's trying to lap Jörg Manny, the Masters Division leader. Soren Garrett's having a solid top 5 run right now, and we see Jörg Manny trying to fight with Paul Jackson to get a position, and he's got the leader breathing right down his neck. Jackson's going to go off the track. Jörg's going to pull to the side and let Joyner go, and he's going to get that spot away from Jackson as he rejoins. So a big shuffle there in a very tight section of the track gets done relatively cleanly, with Paul Jackson going for a bit of an excursion off-road there. Jörg Manny back into that Masters Division lead, and he's now, if he's going to have to take one less lap of fuel, because he's down a lap to Ian Joyner, and he's probably not going to get that back.
And one thing to raise about the early stages of this race, point raised by our wonderful producer, Mr. Marzucchi, the fact that the only cars on the lead lap are the top 8. Everyone else is a lap down in the early stages of this race. Really shows you the dominating drive that Ian Joyner is having, currently now 14.5 seconds in front of Juan Garcia, your current P2 race leader, current P2 runner in this race, as I get my tongue wrapped around my teeth about 15 times. Ian Joyner, he nearly got cleaned out by a lap car a couple of moments ago, but thankfully for him, the racing gods smiled upon him as we saw that close quarters moment heading off into McIntyre of turn number 3.
Yeah, Glenn Wolowski there on the inside, just trying to keep it pointed in the right direction and stay out of Ian's way, and ends up looping it around there in turn 3. But yeah, Ian's probably hoping that he wore his brown driving suit. We're going to see how this develops. Glenn Wolowski going off there in turn 1 and then coming back onto the track, really trying to wrangle. He does a good job of getting back close to the track and not completely going off into a different postal code as he's off the track, then ends up pointed in the wrong direction and having to wait for a gap. And nope, he's just going to tow. He's also had enough.
Yeah, a lot of drivers have decided, screw this at this point in this race. As we take a look at Soren Garrett's, that's coming out of turn number 3, ends up in the paint. And is there any sort of spin for him heading off through the chicane? Hitting the curbs big time through there, hits the curb on the exit, and that's going to cause him to loop it around. Not a lot of harm or foul done outside of some lost time and a slightly dented ego there. That chicane, every single time I see these cars go through that 5 and 6 section, usually see it a bit more in the dry, but you do see it a little bit in the rain. These drivers clearly tempting fate with the curbs through there. It reminds me of my karting roots and seeing a shifter kart race where these drivers just whack the crap out of the curbs and get all 4 wheels off the deck. If we were running this race in the dry, people would be taking the F1 2014 line through there and bunny hopping it over the chicane.
Absolutely. And we look at the timing board. Juan Garcia is now in second place, which puts Yanshi Lin back to third. He was in second. He was about 7 seconds behind Ian Joyner. Now he's 17 seconds back. So Yanshi Lin having a moment out there on his own. He did not come into the pits, so that's not what caused him to lose that much time. So Yanshi Lin having an incident, and right now it's looking basically like Ian Joyner is the only one that hasn't had a big moment on track. Juan Garcia, we saw him going off track a few times, so he's had his fair share of troubles. Right now, Ian Joyner, the only one to keep it clean.
Yeah, Ian Joyner, the only driver at this point in this race who hasn't been struck by a falling anvil, ended up off the track. Yep, I'm going to stop myself right there because I probably just jinxed him. I apologize in advance, Ian. Just at the fast lap of the race last time by, so he's not taking it easy either in that number 8 car. And to show you how dominant he's been in this race, he just lapped Tortullo. Tortullo, the American-born driver who races under a Japanese flag, who lives in the UK, He's fast. He's a real-life Formula V driver. He's on track for a second straight championship in the Formula V Weekend Warriors, which, by the way, you can catch every single Saturday exclusively here on SMB. Tullo's quick. So the fact that Ian Joyner has been able to lap him in that number 27 car is absolutely wild. This number 8 car truly on rails.
Yeah, and I want to say that maybe that's part of the reason why he's been able to keep it clean. Sometimes you get in these tricky conditions with a lot of rain and a lot of puddles on the track, and drivers tend to take it easy, and that doesn't allow them to establish a rhythm where it looks like Ian Joyner's been on the button the entire race, so he's been able to, keep himself locked in, find a rhythm, make his way through the traffic, deal with the conditions, and I think that's what it's allowed him to keep it clean. As we're going to jump back and take a look at a car coming through the chicane, going to get it a little bit wrong there. Juan Garcia, our second place driver, he's got another car stricken. I think he might have seen that car coming and was trying to avoid it long before he got there, and almost ended up crashing in the process, and that was Yanxi Lin. So that's what happened with Yanxi Lin. Looks like he got a little wild through the chicane, got out there on that exit curb, had a problem. It caused him to lock up and gave that position to Juan Garcia, and that's how he got second place.
So got the move done rather slickly there. It's still fight with Garcia and Yanxi Lin. Those two cars covered by half a second as it stands at the present moment. Seeing Ian Joyner negotiate with some more lap traffic. That's heading through Taylor's of turn number 9, the final corner around this racetrack, and one of the premier overtaking opportunities as well. That was Mark Smith that he overtook, who decides that now is the time to come into the pits. When it comes to these rain races here from the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors, the pit stops, just everything gets thrown completely asunder in terms of what you usually think about pit strategy calls and all that jazz, because you think usually, okay, yeah, about 10 minutes into this race, the pit window's open, I'll be able to make it to the end. Here, on the other hand, I've seen drivers stretch the tanks in these Formula Ford cars all the way until the end of the race and end up getting a penalty as a result of not coming into the pit. So these drivers don't run. It's interesting. You think, okay, yeah, with that taken into consideration, there's probably less of a say in how you do in this race in terms of the pit strategy, but it can still make a huge difference considering how spread out this field is. If you come into the pits, find yourself in a hornet's nest of race cars, you'll all end up spinning off the track, and you get caught up in the midst of that, you're going to be screwed. So the pit stops, even though it doesn't matter too much in terms of when you pit, it still matters in terms of when you pit and where you exit out.
Absolutely. If you come out into a gaggle car, that's going to be a disaster for you trying to get through turn 1. You're going to have to back off or fight for your life either way. Right now, if you look at the timing screen, other than John Toms in 20th, everybody that's 18th or lower is out of this race. The attrition factor is extremely high, as we're going to see. Ethan Orr going to be struggling with turns 1 and 2. Again, he's coming in, approaching from the middle of the track, and then opens it up at the last second, and he's just going to come in with too much speed, slides down the hill into turn 2, right there where everybody's going to try to come through, and they're going to have a much narrower track to deal with while he sits there and waits for an opening. He's going to get it going once again. Nobody else collected, but Ethan Orr not having a good time in turn 1 today.
And just quickly breaking away from the other racing, I think I heard you snicker a couple of moments ago, Randall, and I think I know why that is the case. We would like to congratulate our main guy here at SMB, Mr. Joshua Wilkie, for him and his family adopting a brand new dog. Special Agent Dana Scully is the other dog's name. It's a very adorable dog. I hope that Josh can load up a photo of it the next time that him and I are on a broadcast together. At least a broadcast here on SMB. I don't think that would go over too well over at Apex, because that Apex, the land where fun is illegal. I may come back to regret saying that. It's a cute dog. I'm gonna bail out on that. Ian Joyner still leading this race. I may end up going for a job hunt after this broadcast is said and done. He's currently 21 seconds in front of Juan Garcia. Garcia and Yanxi Lin side by side. This heading down the railway straightaway through the long meandering corner of turn number 8, now into the final corner of Taylor's and 9. Let's see. Yanxi Lin getting that move done through the braking zone into that hairpin to slip his way up into P2.
We saw Juan Garcia kind of backed out there at the end and didn't fight him too hard because he wanted to take that line that Yanqi Lin was on because he wanted to avoid that puddle. And now he's going to have a huge run down the straightaway. He's going to be able to get alongside for turn 1. No, he's not going to get there, and he's going to wisely back out and maybe follow Yanqi for a lap or two. Yanqi Lin is definitely quick around here, so if you can keep the pressure applied, you might be able to force a mistake and get that position back free. Both these drivers still do need to come in for pits, so we might see a reactive pit out of Juan Garcia now that he's given up the position, possibly. We see Stevie Ray off the track here at Clark once again and getting going back in the right direction, finds a nice little gap to get the car around in and doesn't interfere with anybody else's race, but he's struggling with the wet conditions. Everybody's struggling with the wet conditions, so except for Ian Joyner, this guy right here. He's on rails, like you said before, and he's dealing with these conditions the way only a Brit could.
Yeah, dealing with the conditions well, because he has some experience driving around in the cold and the rain living in the UK. As we take a look at a replay to see something going on with Yanqi Lin. Was running in P2, but I think he got struck by a falling anvil. Let's see it hang down into turn number 9 of Taylor's. And a little bit wiggly through the braking zone. Really wiggly. A lot of wiggly. Sliding off the track. No sliding around the track. He kept it on the road. I'm not sure how he did. I'm not even sure if Yanqi is... I'm not even sure if he knows how he did that. But talk about the save of the year. Certainly doesn't have clean pants after that, but still didn't pick up any grass or gravel on that race car. And considering how sideways, slideways he was, I'm not sure how he managed that.
See, Jörg Manny, the janitor, is on his way to deal with Tortello, trying to get that 7th position away from Tor. After that lap 1 incident, we saw him go down the order quite a ways, and just like he always does every week, the janitor's cleaning up the positions as the race goes on. He's still going to have to come in for fuel at some point, but so are all the drivers ahead of him, and he has been on an absolute tear through this field. Now that he's a lap down, much like Tortello, he's going to have to take 1 lap less of fuel as we're going to jump over to Juan Garcia and Yanqi Lin engaged in this knife fight once again as they make their way through turn 3 and make the run towards the chicane. We'll see if there's any mistakes out of either of these drivers. They still are taking a lot of the curb, and I wonder if they're getting many off tracks there because the incident limits for penalties in this league are pretty tight. So the number of laps that they have in this race are probably going to be running 41 laps. If you go off track there every lap, you're going to find yourself getting a lot of penalties. As Yanqi Lin's going to get this position, looks like Garcia had to back out either from that slide or maybe got a slowdown by cutting that curb too much. That he's going to give that spot back to Lin for now. We'll see if either of these drivers come into the pits this time by. We're getting to that point though. The pit lane's going to get really busy.
And just to touch on the point you raised a couple of moments ago, 13x is the limit for these drivers in terms of picking up a drive-through penalty. After that, you hit 18, and boink, you're done. So we see Ethan Orr. That's a spin coming out of the final chicane. The number 4 car around. That's not the first time we've seen a driver have a moment like that. Certainly won't be the last either, as we take a look and see this battle yet again involving Juan Garcia and Yanqi Lin. Want to raise a point about that car of Lin. If you look very closely at the front of that race car, there is a bit of damage on the nose cone. Not sure if there's any suspension damage on that car as well. Looks like it's tracking true heading down the railway straightaway. Just looks like a giant just like stuck his thumb on the front nose cone of that car while it was being modeled out of clay and just shoved it up a little bit. So not winning any beauty contest is that number 30 car of Yanqi Lin, but he's currently holding on to P2, and considering that Ian Joyner has just completely crapped off into the distance, I feel like Yanqi Lin finishing second or Juan Garcia finishing second in this race, whichever one of these drivers will be able to do it, it'll feel like a win, because I'm not sure whether Ian Joyner has some nitrous in that car or what. He's been in a league all of his own. He's now lapped up to Soren Garrett in 5th, who's the last car still in the lead lap.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to need a calendar to measure this margin of victory and not a stopwatch with the way this is going. Now, they do still have another 10 minutes or just under 10 minutes left in this race, so there's still a lot of time for something to develop in front of Joyner and throw him off his rhythm or possibly collecting. But don't look now. Jörg Manny has been keeping pace with Ian Joyner and is not very far behind him, so he's been able to, to work his way through the field and have a lot of pace, as we're going to see Chris Montgomery now making his way up the hill and towards the chicane. I suspect that maybe he's gone a little bit wide here. And you see if they don't strike that red curb, they end up out there on that exit curb a lot. And this is almost a carbon copy of what we saw out of Ethan Orr a couple laps ago, as he's going to get going back in the right direction. But that incident is going to loom very large for a lot of these drivers, as we see Boris Espin coming down through turn 2, and he's going to slide the car. Maybe not. Oh, there we go. And that's enough to get up a 2x for loss of control. Once they go 90 degrees to the direction of travel, whether they're off track or not, they do get a 2x loss of control. And when it's only 13x before you get a penalty, that's quite sizable.
Yeah, that's a big kick in the shins for some of these drivers. They're going to be looking to avoid that at all costs. As Soren Garrett's making that run to come in to the pits, and Yanxi Lin, he's got a black flag. That's pretty substantial for Yanxi Lin. So that's going to take him out of this race in a pretty bad way. He's now coming into the pit. So Yanxi is racing this race rather hard. I gotta wonder what incident he picked up that front nose cone damage in. But either way, that's going to take him out of a tough call for Yanxi Lin in that number 30 car. He's out and away, albeit 8.5 seconds back of Juan Garcia. And he's also come into the pits yet again. That is not marked as a stop by iRacing. Boris Espin, he's already come into the pits twice, and he finds himself P9 overall and P2 of the Spec 2 drivers. Really shows you how much of a shiitake mushroom show this race has been for a vast majority of the drivers up and down the grid. As we're following Ian Joyner still in the race lead, he's only got 7.5 minutes left to go to cap off a brilliant drive. And considering the rather large gap he found himself entering this race with, I don't think he'll be able to seal the deal quite here today, but certainly going to put one hand firmly on that championship trophy.
Yeah, he might walk away with the clean sweep here today. Actually, no, I take it back. I think Yanxi Lin did lead the first lap, as we see Chris Montgomery and Daniel Viren together on track, but not really racing each other for positions. Right now, Montgomery in your Spec 2 lead, looking to track down maybe Jörg Manny, but that's a huge gap ahead to Jörg Manny. So he's going to be holding position here in 8th, probably going to be the best he can do today. Jörg Manny's still trying to track down the overall leader to see maybe if he can get that lap back. I doubt that he'll be able to get it, but Soren Garrett's not too far up the track from him, so he's looking maybe even to punch his way into the top 5 here if he can get up to Tortello, who he was racing before. So I'm not sure exactly what happened there. Actually, I think what was going on is that he was racing with Tortello. Tor was on a faster lap, so he will have to have been a whole lap faster than Tortello to get that top 5 completed today. Not completely out of scope of reality, as Bill Walker goes for a wild ride there on the exit curb coming out of the chicane in front of a couple drivers. Michael McConnell, and I couldn't see who else that was. He's going to get it going back in the right direction. The drivers, even this far into the race, still struggling to find a rhythm, still struggling to keep it on track.
And that was possibly the slowest spin I've ever seen in my entire life. It was just sideways, 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 whoop, and okay, he managed to keep it going. Oh, don't spin it again there, Jörg. Okay, here we go. Okay, there we go. Jörg Manny able to hold it off. He spun, like half spun one direction, then half spun the other. So I guess, does that count as a full spin, or do the two cancel each other out? He didn't completely loop it, so I guess that would not be a spin from Jörg Manny. Either way, a sideways moment to be sure, coming out of the chicane. The exit of that corner, catching out a lot of drivers, as we see another moment. That's for Boris Espin in the 213 car. That chicane exit, it's caked in gravel. Lots of drivers have gone off the circuit there. The track's so stoned that you think that they would be a groupie for Snoop Dogg. Really rough through that part of the racetrack.
Absolutely, and the puddle out there on that exit curb and the lack of grip on the painted curbs, this all adds up to absolute disaster for most of these drivers. We see Bill Walker having another issue there. Much bigger spin this time out of Bill Walker. It's everybody except for Joyner. Joyner's the only one so far that hasn't given us a highlight, as we see him coming now down the front straightaway and going to be peeling off in the pits. So the leader in the pits, he's got a 20.3 second gap. He might be able to pit and come back out with the lead here, given how short this pit lane is. We'll see how long he's in the box for as Juan Garcia makes his way through the final corner. He might be peeling off into the pits this lap as well, though, so we'll keep an eye on him. Michael McConnell behind him on track, not on the leaderboard, as indeed Juan Garcia will come into the pit lane. Yanqi Lin still another good 30 seconds back, as Ian Joyner rejoins the race in the lead in front of Michael McConnell. Going to make his way down through turn 1 and 2. Comes out, no traffic, no pressure, no problems. And so far, so good for Ian Joyner.
Yeah, and let's keep our fingers crossed that we won't pull off the most unfortunate commentator's jinx on Joyner. Let's see him coming into the pits. That was pretty easy for him. No harm, no foul. I think John Thompson have a good run through the chicane. Let's see, exiting it. And you can see Yanqi Lin a little bit slow right in front of him. And let's see. Oh, that's into turn number 7. And around John Thoms goes in that 977 car. That's a simple spin, no harm, no foul around this track. Still very wet. The temperature is just about the same that they were ever since the drop of the green flag about 40-ish minutes ago. 65 degrees Fahrenheit is the ambient track temperature, around the same at 64. So not an ideal track that these drivers are running around. Yanqi Lin making that call to come into the pits from P2. Ian Joyner, though, still on track for a dominating win. He has 3 minutes left to go and a couple of laps for Joyner to cap off a rather brilliant drive and not seal the deal in the championship, but certainly give himself a really easy through road to seal it in 1 week's time.
We're going to see Chris Montgomery again. He jumps out of the way of Jörg Manny there, and then as they make their way through the chicane, maybe he's going to go for a bit of a wild ride himself. He gets pretty heavily on the curb there, then as soon as he gets to that exit curb, he just spins it right around. We've watched people all day struggle with the exit of the chicane. We've seen a few people struggle with the next corner, Clark, and I think the reason for that is because of the chicane. Everybody's been going off there, bringing all sorts of debris back onto the track. That debris has collected on the outside of Clark corner, the next one after that chicane, and if you run a little bit wide there, you're going to find yourself in all that debris, all that clag, and it's going to send people around. And so if you see somebody going a little bit offline through Clark, they're probably going to spin. As we take a look at this battle between Boris Espin and Chris Montgomery, and this is the battle for the Spec 2 win right now. Montgomery leading the way, so that little bit of a moment has brought him back into the clutches of Boris Espin. They don't have a lot of time left, so Boris in a prime position to get the Spec 2 win away from Chris Montgomery.
And Espin, this would be a really good performance if he's able to hold this off. Already has come into the pits twice in this race, which doesn't take a rocket scientist to know that's one more time than you usually do. But look at that. That's some close quarter stuff. Hang down the railway straight away through turn number 8 into tailors of turn number 9 for one of the last times in this race. Espin trying to get that move done around the outside, but he goes a little bit deep, ends up in the gravel and is sideways through the corner. That's going to cost him a lot of time. All that ground that he made up is gone. So Boris Espin, he's going to have to work really hard at the end of this race. I believe he has about 2 laps to go, does Espin. So certainly not out of time just yet for the driver of the 313 car. But if he wants to grab another win, he is going to have a slightly tougher road than he would have had a couple of moments ago. Soren Garrett and Tortolo, they swapped the roue, and then they swapped the roue yet again as Soren Garrett nearly swapped ends heading through turn number 7. That's going to allow Yanqi Lin to get involved in that fight. Yanqi probably a little bit disappointed with how things have gone for him in this race. Started from the pole, qualified 0.2 of a second quicker than Ian Joyner, but just has not really had the pace to contend with him in this race. And then that penalty not terribly long ago, not going to do him any favors at all. The white flag in the air, though. Only one more lap of racing action here at Knockhill for the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors, and Ian Joyner on track for an absolutely commanding victory. It's been a story of dominance for the driver of the number 8 car. This will be his 7th win of the season, and as I've said quite a few times as of late, won't be able to seal the title just yet, but that's going to give him a pretty good cause for celebration come time for the next race at Zolder in 1 week's time as Soren Garrett spins coming out of the chicane section. Oh, be careful on the rejoin there. We nearly just saw an on-screen fatality of your leader, no less. Holy cow, that could have ended an absolute disaster for Ian Joyner. But thankfully, despite that spike up in blood pressure for the driver of the number 8 car, looks like he only has has one more corner to go to seal the deal on a brilliant drive here in Scotland. Joyner, the driver of the number 8, it's not going to be his 8th win. It's just going to be his 7th. Only 7 wins in 10 races. It's still been a brilliant ride for Joyner, and this is going to do him many, many favors. Ian Joyner wins it here at Knockhill in commanding fashion. We're going to have to wait a little bit, kick up our feet, and relax before Juan Garcia makes it to the start-finish line to finish in P2. But Ian Joyner, the star of the day for sure.
And it looks like only 4 cars are going to finish on the lead lap. So not only that, 1/3 of the race did not, 1/3 of the drivers did not see the checker flag of this race after starting it. So a day of high attrition, lots of lap traffic, lots of incidents on track. We see Kevin Adrian now going to come home 3rd. He's got Jeff Wibker in front of him, who slides to that last corner. It makes Adrian check up big. He's not under any threat from Yanxi Lin, so he's going to easily come home 3rd place overall today. And the lead lap is dominated by the not the pro division, the Spec 1 division drivers. We don't see any Masters or Spec 2s on the lead lap. As Yanxi Lin, after qualifying on pole, only going to come home 4th. Excuse me. Considering that he had a black flag, 4th place is a pretty good finish.
Ricola. Yeah, that was a very good finish for a lot of the drivers. Jurek Mani wins it in the Masters class. Boris Esman ends up taking the checkered flag in Spec 2, and they're lining up for the jump. I am absolutely petrified as to what we're going to see here. Usually Jason Green is kind of the Pied Piper of these jump-related escapades, but did not take to the finish at the end of this race. Got involved in an early incident. He's classed down in 26th. So let's see where they decide. I think it's going to be on the runoff area of turn number 9. So let's see what sort of goofy shenanigans that we have to bring this first race of the day to a close. And hey, folks, we got the Spec Racer Ford coming up in about an hour's time, so that's going to be a good race to look forward to as well. They're going to use a curb, I think. Oh, there's Jörg Monty, ends up upside down, whacks the crap out of the outside tire barrier, and Jörg Monty, it's basically, I don't think we really mentioned it at all. I mean, it's basically his already. Jörg Monty, your 2025 Season 1 Masters champion here for the Formula Ford Weekend Warriors, and giving his team a good little repair bill to cry about tonight.
Hey, Ron.
Yeah, as if his teammate Antonio Reese didn't give them enough. We are now joined by Adam Thompson, who didn't have a fuel management problem today. He just didn't quite make it through turn 3.
Meow.
Oh, Mr. Thompson? Oh, God damn it. Okay. Randall, have you gotten the story about this as well? I would assume you have, potentially.
No, I haven't. I have a guess, but I will not say it on the air.
Not touching that one. So, God, it was probably a month and a half ago at this point. I was doing one of the broadcasts of the Ray Esports Club series, which, by the way, you can catch every single Wednesday night here on Slow Motion Broadcasting. Well, Adam was in the booth with our colleague here at SMB, Mr. Mike Braun. They were preparing for the Sim Racers Group F4 broadcast, and at the end of it all, well, actually during that broadcast that I was doing, I was like, give me 1 second, I'll be right back. So I went down into the booth before they went on the air. This wasn't live, it was off the air. Went in there, said, "Pardon me, I have nothing to say," and then left. So Adam responded 2 minutes later by coming into my booth while we were on the air, mind you, and meowed. So I put I'll put 45% of the blame on myself for creating what sort of demons that we've got here. I gotta say, had some odd experiences in my life. Hearing a 32-year-old man meow on several occasions is certainly high up there in my top 10 or top 5. But I think we're going to take a look at the results. Some very odd things being said at the end of this broadcast. Ian Joyner, though, kicking butt and taking names in the 10th race of this season. He wins it 25 seconds in front of Juan Garcia in P2. Kevin Adrian going to round out your overall podium in 3rd. That's Yanxi Lin finishing in 4th. Tortullo ends up in 5th. Soren Garrett's going to finish right behind in 6th. The first car 1 lap down. Jörg Monty going to win it in the Masters category, finishing this race in 7th. Then we have Michael McConnell in 8th. Boris Espen, your winner in the Spec 2 class, finishes in 9th overall. And Paul Jackson going to round out your top 10.
In 11th place, Chris Montgomery, and then the league administrator Stevie Ray gonna finish in 12th overall despite all his incidents that he had on track. Ethan Orr struggled a lot with the turns 1 and 2 today. Comes home 13th. Bill Walker, we saw him around quite a few times at the exit of the chicane. Finishes 14th. Jeff Whoopker 15th. Mark Smith in 16th, Daniel Varon in 17th, 18th, John Toms. And then as we scroll down through the results, we'll see that 19th position is Glenn Woloski. And then 20, rounding out your top 20, Chris Walker.
I was about to break out the drum roll as we were trying to reveal who it was in P19. Adam Thompson going to be classed in 21st at the end of this race. Most of these drivers did not see the finish. Richard Harwood was one of them in 22nd. Daniel Tufts in 23rd. Fabian Singer in 24th. Andrew Love in 25th. Antonio Reese in 26th. And Jason Green going to be classed down in 27th. Rounding out your results at the end of this race at Knockhill. Randall, we got a lot of drivers looking to have a chat with us at the end of this broadcast. I'll let you have first dibs and bring in whoever you want to have a chat with.
I have brought in the number one kayak pilot in the series, Ian Joyner. Everybody else seemed to really be struggling with the rapids in turn 1 and 2. You were the only driver that seemed to have kept it clean all race. What gives, dude? How are you so good?
It wasn't really clean, to be fair. It was definitely a nice margin at the end. Maybe you didn't see, but I was off twice. I guess I just had a good pace and could compensate for it, but it was definitely not easy. I don't know. I thought it would have been a lot closer as well because of the qualifying was so close. So I don't know. I seemed to just get on it pretty quick out of the blocks, and then Yankee was. I think did he fighting Richard? I think he had a little tango with Richard, didn't he? And then it's that same old story, isn't it? As soon as you get a gap, everything just gets a little bit easier. And then it's just survival, which again I did have some pretty big moments, but luckily nothing broke. Had a bit of margin. It was a tricky race. I mean, Knockhill in the dry. I was wondering how many times in a 40-minute race in the dry with the short laps you'd have to survive the chicane. So at least when it's wet, everything happens a little bit slower. But it's so treacherous. I think we were almost 3 wide into T1 on start. So it was pretty intense.
So today, unlike a lot of tracks, given that the short nature of this track, you had to deal with a lot of lap traffic. How nervous were you seeing how many incidents were happening in front of you that you were going to be taken out as a random bystander in somebody else's incident, especially given that you were lapping them?
Yeah, so it was really, really easy to happen, and obviously not even without any kind of malice or intention. It's just very easy for people to go off, and then the racing line narrows so much when it's wet, and you get the rubber bits and the transition from wet to dry, so it can really make the car do weird things. But I've said it a few times. The credit to everyone in this league, really, and I think there's the general sort of standards and expectations the organisers set that everybody's really good. So it's touch wood, not too scary. Generally speaking, everyone's just really good about it. Try not to cost themselves any time. Sort of just try to lift in sensible places. So yeah, it was all okay. More danger from me, to be honest. Just pushing a bit too hard.
Well, congratulations on yet another victory here. You got one hand on the championship trophy. Next week, looking to possibly lock it up. So before we let you go celebrate what's been an awesome season and another win for you, who do you want to thank? Who do you want to shout out?
Thanks again to you guys. I just got a message off my dad. I know he's watching it. It's kind of cool for people to be able to watch it live. So thank you for that. Thanks for the great job on the coverage. And thanks for everyone on the everyone in the league.
Well, congratulations once again. And for some reason, I don't think we're done talking to you this season.
We'll find out. Hopefully see you next week.
That was Ian Joyner, your overall race winner, and the guy that's absolutely cleaning it up in the Spec 1 division. And Ron, who have you found?
Well, on the subject of people cleaning things up, we got Jörg Monty joining us in the commentary booth. Mr. Monty, Mr. Janitor, welcome back into the booth. Another win this season. That champagne, the taste of that must be getting a little bit old, huh?
No, sorry, I have to drop. Just dropped my champagne glass. No, I don't know. I'm dead. And Adam knows why. I'm really, really dead. I was thinking of not racing today. I'm really dead. I can't almost turn the wheel anymore. But it was still fun. Yeah, I did some nice excursion on the track here and there. But it was fun. It was nice. I could pass some people. That was good too. So, yeah, it was nice. But let's see what's happening in the SRF now.
Ron, quickly, I wanted to hop in here because I wanted to tell you, I knew Jorg was going to be in here as well. I want a massive shout out to Jorg, Monty, Tyler Brown, not so much myself, but we did our first ever, SMR team race yesterday. We had 3 teams do the Bathurst 12 hour, and Jorg was on my team, and it was a lot of fun. And Jorg stayed up super late to get that done because I wasn't going to be able to be around at the end. So yeah, Jorg, again, shout out to you. We had our issues, but yeah, man, it was an absolute blast, and I can't wait to see where SMR goes. But yeah, that's all I wanted to say, Ron. But I knew Jorg was going to be in here, so I had to say something.
Yeah, I was just going to. Well, yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead. No, go aheed, Ron.
Yeah, I was just going to ask about slow motion racing and this this brand new win of this brand new wing of SMB. I was keeping tabs on all of that between balancing the Formula V show yesterday and my time on the iRacing coverage of the top split race. Pretty cool to see some SMR cars out there, and I gotta say, very nice liveries, Mr. Thompson. But I gotta say, honestly, I commend your the Stones to even come out here on track, because after doing that time in the Bathurst 12-hour race, I can imagine your arms are feeling like jelly. And you said that you're maybe going to be in the Spec Racer Fords later on, or are you just going to be watching the broadcast potentially?
No, I'm gonna be there because I like VIR. It's always a nice track. And I warned the guys already. I'm gonna pause you guys on the snake section. They're already horrified. So maybe they'll let me pause before that. No, I'm gonna be on the SRF race. Yeah, definitely. And by the way, Adam did a perfect job in the rain. He did a perfect job.
I know, Jorg. I know.
Yeah, tip-top job. I'll leave that be. But Jorg, thank you so much for joining us here in the commentary booth, and good luck in the Spec Racer Ford race. But before we let you go from this broadcast, gotta continue on the other trend of not asking you the usual question that we wrap this broadcast up with. Favorite color for a blanket to have in your bed? Oh no,
Orange.
Orange. There we go. It's There we go, gang. The only the finest and most detailed questions here on Slow Motion Broadcasting. Jorg, thank you very much for joining us in the commentary booth, and congratulations on your 14th bajillion win thus far this Formula Ford season.
Thank you, guys. A big shout out to you guys. You're doing an awesome job. Not so Guido, but he's new. He will learn.
Damn. Guido's doing a good job. He's better at the production than I think I ever would be. So I'll leave that be. But Jorg, thanks for joining us in the booth, and well done.
Thanks a lot, guys. And yeah, good night, guys. So far.
And that right there was Jorg Monty. Always colorful. Always colorful. I think we got some time for one more interview. So Randall, who would you want to have a chat with before we wrap things up?
Well, I was going to grab Paul Jackson, but he left at the last moment. So I'm going to pull in our second place finisher, Juan Garcia. Juan, we saw you with a little bit of an off-track adventure in the opening laps, and then involved in a heavy fight with Yanqi Lin for that second position in the midpoint of the race. Tell us what it was like out there for you today.
It's good to be here, fellas. I probably won't be here too often, but yeah, that was a tough battle. Yanqi is really fast, has great pace and wet, but he was pushing a little hard, and I could see him making small mistakes here and there. You saw whenever I seemed to pass him, it was due to him screwing up, because overall he had better pace than I did, but you got to be smooth in the rain. But I was able to, I made my share of mistakes. I came out with 6 incidents. But I was able to mostly keep it on the track. So thankfully, my strategy of keeping a good pace while still surviving paid off in this case, because he came out of the pits in second place, and then he kind of disappeared. I haven't seen what happened to him. I guess he had a major off track.
Yeah, he ended up. I think he ended up getting a black flag for incident points because the league runs a pretty tight ship when it comes to that, and he was really sending it. Yeah, so he had ended up with a drive-through penalty, which gave you a clear run at second place once that shook out. You mentioned that you're surprised to be in here. You're surprised, that we probably won't get another chance to talk with you. You do have 2 more races left this season. It's been kind of the Joyner show this season. So, do you have any shots? Do you have any chances to run him down? Do you think?
Listen, my only chance of beating Joyner is in the rain because I'm a pretty solid rain driver. I'm not as fast in the dry. I'm respectable in the dry, but it's the rain is where I'm good at. And today Joyner came out there and he started putting down quality laps every lap. So today was not that day. But I do have a chance in the rain. I definitely have a chance if he doesn't show up like Okayama, but on that track I was locking up a lot, as you saw. And even though I ended up setting the fastest lap of that race, I was all over the place. This time, I decided I had to be a little bit more conservative. I wasn't going to go for the fastest lap every time. I had to stay on the track. Because like you said, 18 incident points, you get a drive-through. It's very easy on this track. You have 40 laps in a 40-minute session. And if you get an off track, even once every 2 laps, even half as many, you're still going to go in. And I guess that's what happened.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully you get another shot to take it to Ian Joyner and we get to talk to you again. But in the meantime, now that we have you here, is there anybody you'd like to thank or shout out before we let you go celebrate this really good finish?
Shout out to all my buds that are watching. And shout out to Stevie Ray for all the work he does and the rest of the admin crew. And shout out to you guys, Randall and Ron there, doing the announcing every time. You guys do a great job, and I love watching the races after the race is finished. Hopefully, I'll talk to you guys again, but we'll see.
Well, congratulations on a really great finish here today in the rain, and hopefully we get to talk to you again soon.
All right, thanks, guys.
That was your Spec 2 and overall second place, or Spec 1 and overall second place finisher, Juan Garcia. We'll see if he can take it to Ian Joyner in the coming weeks. And that's all I got for you, Ron.
And I think that's just about all the time we've got for in terms of interviews. And we're going to be switching our attention to the Spec Racer Fords later on today. But 2 more races left to go from this fantastic Formula Ford Weekend Warrior season. Usually I'd ask you what your thoughts are heading into the next race of the calendar, but I don't believe you're going to be with us for this for that broadcast in 1 week's time, Randall. So that's going to be Zolder for the next race of the season. That track, as Jeremy Clarkson once said on episode of Top Gear, it's Belgium's second most famous racetrack, but that's still a wonderful circuit. It's played host to a Spec Racer Ford race earlier on this season. That's played host to a Formula V Weekend Warriors race. I don't believe, at least in the entire time it's been broadcasted here on SMB. But Zolder, that's going to be a good one in 1 week's time, and then we'll round off this Formula Ford season with VIR, which is going to play host to that Spec Racer Ford race later on. So a lot of stuff to look forward to here on SMB, not just for the rest of today. We got the Spec Racer Fords and that XSLR later on this evening, but just a lot of stuff here on Slow Motion Broadcasting. Gives you a good reason to subscribe and hit that notification bell. We're at 931 as it stands at the moment, 931 subscribers. So let's get to that final push of 1,000 before we get season 2 of 2025 underway in a couple of weeks' time. That's my wish. I'm sticking to it, and I think that's just about all the time we've got for. So for myself, Mon Rons, Randall McGrew joining me in the commentary booth, and Guido Marzucchi working on the cameras in the virtual production hauler, I say thank you all so very much for watching. Have a great rest of your day. And after this broadcast, I think I may need to get my tongue unwrapped around my teeth. Take care, everybody.